And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. Ryan and I back to recap episode 8 of Survivor season 44. It was an interesting one, to say the least, and I can't wait to recap it. How are you doing, Ryan?
Dylan, I am doing well. We had a good episode last night, first time in a few weeks. If it was a bad episode, I would have leaned heavily into the Danny fart jokes, but you know what? It was a great episode, so 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I gotta say, I mean, look, I've been pretty down on this season up until this point. So it was nice to have a very good tribal council and very good episode yesterday. I think that was pretty much the consensus around the Survivor community, and I mean, both of us seem to think that as well. Everybody I've spoken to agrees. So I'm happy that we finally got that, because it seems like it's been a long time coming for it.
I mean, who would have thought? I mean, a merge vote where everybody goes, everybody has one vote, their strategy. I mean, who would have thought?
Look, it's back. We're back. We're back. We're back. We're in a good spot. And yeah, we're going to recap the episode tonight. First, I just wanted to say some horrible news from the Survivor community this week, that Keith Nail, who was on Survivor season 29 and 31, passed away. I believe it was on Tuesday, I believe. Obviously devastating news, and, you know, all thoughts are with his family. Just, you know, terrible. Like, one of my favorite Survivor players of all time. I mean, pretty much everybody loved him. So that was tough to see. So, you know, 62, really young, and cancer sucks. So,
I mean, I again, I like Survivors that our heart goes out to Wes and the whole Nail family. Like Keith always just brings a smile to our face. Like I can think of so many times when Keith gave us a laugh. I mean, all of his former castmates are just saying Keith just brought so much, you know, levity to the situation and always made them smile. And I think Reed on a season even said, like, I mean, you know, Keith's a firefighter, put others before himself, would give you his own shirt off his back. So he will, but I mean, Keith was obviously one of a kind.
yeah, for sure. And it was great this week seeing all the tributes go out from all the players that had played with him. I really enjoyed reading all those. So, yeah, I just wanted to, you know, start off the podcast with that. But, you know, let's get to the recap of episode 8, which, as we said, we both enjoyed it a lot. Now, a reminder, if you're watching, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like the video, follow us on all socials. Links are in the description below. Also subscribe, rate, and review on Apple. That would really help us out. So be sure to do that. But let's get started. Brandon voted out in what was a successful idol play on somebody else. Danny plays his idol successfully on Franny. Franny gets the majority of the votes, but Brandon goes home as those votes are nullified by the idol. I got to say, and this is actually, I want to bring this up. I just had Twitter open because I wanted to read this exact tweet that I had seen last night after I watched the episode. And it was one of these tweets, you know, sometimes you read a stat and you're like, wait a second, like, how could this be? Okay. From Mike Bloom, fun Survivor fact. Danny is the first person to successfully play an idol on somebody else's tribal council since Davey played his on Christian back in the minority vote split in David versus Goliath. Yeah. So it has been 7 seasons since we have seen somebody successfully use an idol for somebody else. And honestly, it feels like it's been that long, and we finally got it. So that was awesome to see. What are your thoughts initially on the move? Obviously, Danny perfectly executed what he wanted to do. Complete props to him on completely reading the situation correctly, because I had my doubts myself, and I'm sure you did as well. I'm curious to hear what you think. We can get into the move, whether we think it was actually a good move or not, or, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's crazy. I feel like the last few weeks we haven't gotten to discuss a vote strategy in depth, because we had the Matthew medevac, the Josh vote was very straightforward, and then the Matt vote was super fluky last week. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about all the different permutations of why people voted why they did. But yeah, listen, obviously it was the right move for Soka. Clearly, we've seen this Soka Ratu war brewing for a bit now, especially after they took Matt out last week. It was clear that Danny, Franny, and Heidi couldn't lose one of each other. They had to make sure Ratu went home. So they obviously made the right move, and they went for probably the biggest threat on Ratu in Brandon. So great move for them. I mean, I feel like Mike Bloom said this. I feel like who else said this on Twitter? I think Shannon Gus said this as well. It's like Tika putting on like a master class and like playing the middle, where it's like they decide in the end to side with Soka. And by the way, I think also for Tika it was the right move because, like we discussed last week, you let the Ratu 4 slide through another week with Lauren's extra idol. They're going to have a majority of the votes at final 9. So you had to take a shot this week. You had to. But basically, Tika masterclass in the middle because not only are they working with Soka because they know what the plan is going to be to save Franny, they still vote with Ratu. Well, Carson and Jam Jam do at least. They vote with Ratu, knowing that Franny will be safe. So that way they give themselves the option next week to stay in the middle, not show their cards, and they can stick with Ratu, stick with Soka, or they can flip over to Ratu now. So great job by the Three Stooges last night.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, and a lot of people were saying this. I didn't exactly. I guess I didn't like pick up on this as soon as I saw it, but like once I just turned on Twitter right after I watched the episode, I was like, oh, like they Carson and Jam Jam knew exactly what was going to happen, and they still voted for Franny. This way, it seems like they were going with the plan to Ratu, but they actually knew it was going to happen. Now, what I want to bring up is Carolyn actually voted Brandon in this situation. So it was a 6-4 vote, technically a 4-0 vote because the votes got nullified, but it was 6-4 with Carolyn being that fourth vote for Brandon. I have my theories on why Carolyn did vote for Brandon. I know a lot of people, there was, speculation. It could have been for this reason, for that reason. But my theory is that if Ratu had made a plan to split the votes, okay, I guess I think that the Tika had already decided that they wanted Brandon out of the game, right? It's pretty clear. Yeah. They decided they wanted to side with Soka. So I guess if there was a vote split, Carolyn voting with the 3 Soka ensured that it would be 4-3-3 still. I guess so. I guess it was just like a backup just in case we wanted just in case something crazy happened, we need a fourth vote on Brandon, just to ensure that the person that we want to go home goes home. I think that's what it had to be. I'm not sure if you have any other speculations there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I feel like we might not know for sure until we hear, exit interviews and people come out of the game. But my initial thought, and obviously I think Twitter, and this is actually another reason why, Dylan, even though I missed doing it right after the episode, having a day to let it sink in really lets us put more pieces together. So I've kind of been enjoying that. My initial thoughts was basically that Carolyn, Jam Jam, and Carson voted, not all together because Tika's playing the middle. And kind of like Nate says in the chats, they wouldn't come off as a trio. Like they're dysfunctional. Right. People are underestimating Carolyn. They're underestimating Jam Jam, and everybody wants to work with Carson. So how do you make yourselves look less threatening as a trio? Especially because you came into the merge with lower numbers, they are like, oh, we're not all on the same page. Carolyn voted for freaking Brandon and we voted for Franny. So we're not all working together, but they are. So that was my first thoughts. The point that you made, I didn't consider until I was doing some more research, but I didn't consider that if Brandon and the group says, okay, we're going to vote for Franny, and they realize, shoot, we shouldn't have told Danny and Heidi that we were going to do that because they could snake us. Let's flip our votes to now put our votes on Heidi. Carolyn voting with them actually, like you said, makes it like a 4-3-3 or 4-4-3 in that case. So I didn't consider that aspect. I think that actually makes a lot of sense if Carolyn did it that way. But I could also see it just being like they didn't want to come off as a tight trio.
Yeah, that's another good point. I think it's definitely, and like you said, the Tika 3, they're playing a masterclass at playing the middle right now, right? So they go into next week's going to be final 9. Yeah. And pretty much like, I don't think anybody really sees it at this point. We see it from our television. I don't really know if anybody else sees it because, like you said, they kind of put on a good display here where they act like they were on the wrong side of the votes, at least 2 of them. And the other one, they act, Carolyn, she votes differently from them. So, people may not view it as them being together. And honestly, Jam Jam had his name kind of brought out a few weeks in a row, but I don't really know if I see his name coming up anytime soon. And Carolyn and Carson have basically never once in the last few episodes had their name brought up at all. So it's like these three players who completely seem non-threatening for all different reasons. They're banding together. No one really sees it. And I think next week we're going to have a similar situation where them three are going to be the deciding factors on who goes home. So it is very interesting. I'm at the point, and again, things could completely flip. I'm at the point where I feel like two out of these three get to the final three at this point. And it's so early, it's final 10, but I mean, we've seen pretty much this entire season focused around those three. So to me, something crazy would have to happen in my opinion, for this to go wrong. And I guess when I say something crazy, literally if Soka and Ratu, if let's just say one or two votes more happen where Tika is the middle, and then all of a sudden the remaining Soka and Ratu say, wait a second, now our numbers got whittled down, but Tika, there's still three original Tika, and then all of a sudden everything could flip. So who knows? But yeah, that's the vibes I'm getting. So we'll see what happens. One thing I do want to mention with this vote is it was so sloppy by Ratu. Like, and it's funny because we kind of got hinted and foreshadowed this entire episode that Ratu is going to get screwed here, because I mean the episode title, Kane says that he told himself going out here, as soon as you feel cocky, that's when you know you're in trouble. Yet they screw up, right? He told us, this is not good that I feel cocky, yet I feel cocky, and they get screwed over. It looked like Kane and Brandon were very close. Brandon gets voted out, Kane gets screwed over, Ratu gets screwed over. So look, it was a slop fest in terms of trying to figure out that vote. And it was so weird. Like, and again, we listen to this a day, we record the podcast a day later, and I listened to a bunch of other podcasts, read a bunch of articles.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty crazy. Like, I think it was Rob Cesternino on RHAP made he said, how did Ratu just go to Soka and tell them who was going to be voted out? Like, it was so like almost mind-boggling, the fact that it was so easy for Soka to find out who the target was. Everybody on that island knew that Franny was being targeted, right? Mm-hmm. So it was just so easy for Danny, having an idol, to be like, all right, well, if I want to save Franny, I could easily do that. Now, obviously, the plan almost gets derailed because Heidi has had some crazy moments the last few weeks. This may have been the number one of them all. Why would you go to the players in the middle and tell them about Danny's idol? That was a crazy move. Yet it became clear based on exit press. And again, this is why it's good to, there's pros and cons of doing the podcast on Thursday instead of Wednesday night. We learned from Brandon's exit press, which I read, or at least skimmed through, that Brandon did not really know about Danny's idol. He did not hear from Jam Jam, confirmed, did not go to Ratu and be like, guys, Danny has an idol. He may be, he could maybe be available to vote for tonight, right? So that was something that as viewers of the episode in real time, we were kind of under the impression that was maybe going to happen. And that was the mystery going into tribal council, is like, well, did Jam Jam go to Ratu and inform them about what was going to happen? Or did he keep quiet about it? Clearly Danny was able to sniff out that Ratu was pretty much strong with that Jam Jam and Carson were pretty much strong with the plan and knew it was going to happen. They were going to allow it to happen. Because yeah, I mean, again, it was a good job by Danny to basically sniff that out and, make sure, I guess, that Jam Jam did not, go to Ratu with this information, because that could have been truly tragic for them.
Yeah. I think a couple questions that I had last night was yeah, you're right. I was very curious why Heidi, and I do like Heidi, but I was very curious why she told Carson and Jam Jam that information about his idol, because like you mentioned, it would have been so easy for Jam Jam to run back to Ratu and say, oh, Danny's going to play it on Franny. And then they snake Danny and Danny goes home. That would have been very easy to do. So I didn't know why she did that. And then I also didn't know, Dylan, why and I didn't think about this until later. I was like, why didn't Ratu split the votes? Like, I mean, they just put them and Tika, except for Carolyn, put all their votes on Franny. And in the exit press, Brandon was like, it's my fault. I didn't check in. It's always important to check in with your allies. Make sure you're on the same page. If you're going to do a split, make sure you're very clear on it. And he was like, I didn't really think about it. I didn't really do it. We ran out of time. And at Tribal Council, he turns to Lauren and he's like, I think after Danny put the idol on Franny, he was like, I think we're still fine. And Lauren's like, shit, I don't think we split the vote. So to answer both these questions, I was like, this is just really weird. Dylan, I didn't realize this until I looked at Wikipedia and then I looked at Twitter. I know that this is a fast game. It's 26 days. I didn't realize we've had 3 tribal councils 3 nights in a row.
3 days, right?
I did not realize Josh was gone day 13, Matt was gone 14, and then last night was 15 with Brandon, which that explains to me so much because like that answers why Brandon and them didn't split the votes is because like he said, they ran out of time. They had that super long challenge last night that apparently gave them only a few hours to scramble and they just ran out of time. I think Heidi probably told Carson and Jam Jam because she's like, crap, I need to lock them in tonight. How do I lock them in? Oh, I can lock them in because Danny has an idol. So I can promise you guys, you're in the middle, you're nervous. This plan will work. And I think I think the time explains why some of these moves or mistakes were maybe made.
Yeah, I did see Stephen Fishback tweeting about that, right? It is so crazy to have 3 votes in 3 days.
It's too fast.
It is too fast, right? And I have a feeling that whenever we do get returnees from pre-40 seasons, those players are in for a shock, right? Because even though they've played Survivor before, they haven't played this kind of Survivor where there's just like no time to do anything. So again, I don't want to get into a whole tangent about how they should go back to 39 days, but they should go back to 39 days because it is way too fast paced. And all that being said, I do want to also get to the point. Was this the right move for Danny, right? It's one of those moves that seems great in real time. But we won't know if it was truly great until we see the outcome of Danny's game, the outcome of what happens next week, the week after, how it plays out. But in my mind, I initially loved the move, and now I think more about it. I'm like, well, he's out there right now in Final 9. He is the top target, I think, by a landslide. So he has his work cut out for him, right? I think it's going to be almost impossible for him at this point to lower his threat level to a point where he will be completely safe. That being said, like it's always possible to lower your threat level. It's just like, how are you going to lower your threat level when nobody is even throwing the Tika names out at all? So that basically limits it down to 6. Somebody's going to win an immunity. Mm-hmm. There's only so many names that can be thrown out there. It's going to be insanely hard for him to get the target off his back, especially when it shows the preview next week where he's running through the jungle trying to find something. Clearly he feels the pressure. He may need to win immunity next week in order to survive, right? But then again, we've seen several moments in Survivor history where it's like you just got to worry about the vote in front of you and then take it from there, right? Mm-hmm. Because for some players, of course, depending on the situation, because all you really need is 1 more day or 2 more days and everything can completely change. So, somebody else could do something incredibly stupid that leads to them being voted out over Danny. And then all of a sudden, Danny's in the final 8. Numbers look different. He could rattle off an immunity or 2 in a row. Your final 6. So you never know what could happen, right? But I get a sense that Danny still has his work cut out for him with this idol play. Now, also, I do understand from the perspective of Danny that at this point, half the people out there knows he had the idol, and the other people that were on Ratu, there was some maybe rumors based on their conversation with Matt last week that he did have the idol. So pretty much everyone was speculating or knew that Danny had the idol. So I think, honestly, it may have benefited his threat level to just get rid of the idol and just play it. And now everyone's like, well, Danny doesn't have an idol anymore, so we don't have to worry about that. Lauren's the one with the extra vote, right? So it is... I see both sides of it. But Danny definitely is going to have his work cut out for him getting his threat level down. That's for sure.
So my question for you is, so when you say that you initially love the move and even now you think it's fine, but you had some reservations, you're not really sure. You're saying you think that like you're debating whether he should have played it for Franny there. Like, because obviously if he doesn't play for Franny there, she goes home, but he still has his idol for next week if he needs it. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's the other thing that's really incomplete information is like because Soka was locked in. Basically, we think that Soka wanted Brandon out. So the question is if nobody said anything about Danny's idol, right? Do Soka do Tika make sure that Brandon goes home still? You know what I mean? Like, I think Tika obviously wants to flush there. It's in Tika's best interest to have Danny play his idol and
Right.
have him flush it out.
Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely, they made the right move in everything that they did. But if Danny's idol is more secretive, I'm curious to know whether or not, like if Heidi doesn't say that, I'm curious to know what happens. Honestly, I'm curious to know if they still vote Franny out or if they go with the plan to vote Brandon and basically just draw a line in the sand. We don't really know. It's really impossible for us to know. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll have to see. But
so I mean, look, obviously we keep mentioning Heidi said this to Carson and Jam Jam, and we were debating, why did she say this to them? Because it could have blown up in their face, and obviously it ended up working out. And we can maybe blame the short time frame of strategizing for that. We haven't really said yet. Like, I actually give Danny a little bit of blame. Like, obviously, I think I think he made a good move saving Franny. I mean, obviously, he loses his idol, but he keeps an ally in Franny. Ratsu loses a member in the war, so I think it was fine. I still don't know why he told Heidi to begin with. Now, again, I think we've seen in the new era, people just like to talk. It's a very short time frame. The game is very fast paced. People share secrets. I mean, him just mentioning this in general to Heidi, I think was a little bit of a misstep. I think he should have just kept it to himself.
for sure.
Because then what happened, as we see, like he had to then debate at the end. He's like, crap, do I save Franny or do I just play it safe and just play it on myself? But like, he put himself in that spot because he told Heidi about the idol.
Yeah. You make a good point, right? It's like at the end, how many times do we have to preach that on this podcast? Is like, if you get the idol, you got to keep it to yourself. And this honestly, a lot of this even goes back to like him being so aggressive with hiding the fake idol, right? Because maybe the fake idol was, maybe it was a curse, right? It's like, I think the right move looking back on the fake idol is to just like pocket it and use it for a time that you need it, rather than just like a lot of them every tribe, they just buried it right away and like had somebody find it right away. But as you saw, Matt having the fake idol set off a siren, well, basically because of the information that he heard from Brandon that maybe I do have the fake idol. Well, if Matt didn't have the fake idol, then there's probably no speculation about anything. Obviously, there's speculation that the idol could be had by somebody there, or there could be speculation that somebody went home with the idol in their pocket, like a Matt or something, right? So it's like, I think that, this all goes back to our comments from much earlier in the season. I believe it was like the second episode where Danny hid the fake idol. And we were sitting here saying, loved it in the moment, but it could be too much too soon. And now we're kind of seeing the effects of that, where Danny is the biggest threat left in the game with 10 people left, which is not the ideal spot. Ideally, you want to be much further down on that list until later in the game. But it's not impossible to think that he could pull off some type of run, but his work is definitely cut out for him. And I think that it all stems from basically that move, like on day 2.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good question that I feel like we don't debate enough. And I feel like, I know Rob and others have said this on their podcast, but that's a really good point. It's like, everyone's so concerned about, like whether it's Danny, whether it's Rick Devens, even if it's like Bob Crowley, it's like all throughout ever since Guatemala, ever since idols were introduced, everyone's like, I need to make a fake idol so others can find it. But obviously there are times where people make a fake idol for themselves to bluff. And we're debating, is it better to use a fake idol for yourself or to trick somebody else? And I feel like it might have more benefits to use it for yourself, because like somebody else, it could backfire. They could get mad at you. You could lose a jury vote. And I feel like Danny, like you said, was a little preoccupied with making sure Matt got this, and it kept maybe Matt in check for him. But kind of this ball kind of is unraveled a bit, and now Danny can be in some trouble.
Right. Like, what if What if Danny had the fake idol in his possession right now? Well, I would say his game would look a lot different going forward, right? Because if he's in trouble next week, let's say he doesn't win immunity, and everyone's like, well, I want to play the guy who just I want to vote out the guy who just successfully played an idol for somebody last week, right? At least if he had that fake idol, he could bluff it and be like, I have an idol. And yeah, I mean, he wouldn't have to. I mean, he could show it, and people could speculate: is it fake? Is it real? Well, it's different on every tribe. People don't know that yet, really, or maybe people figured it out. I don't know. But if he had held on to the fake idol, he would not have been in the predicament yesterday, last night, where a lot of people knew about it, and he would have ammo for himself in case he needed like a Hail Mary to save himself going forward. So I think that it is interesting because honestly, I hadn't really thought about this until now, but like everything that happened last night, it stems back to that very beginning moment that we spoke about on here. Is he doing too much too soon? And now, because of what he did on day 2 and the information that spread, he's in a spot where he is the most threatening player potentially at this point, at least viewed that way.
The one last thing I'll say about idols is that obviously, again, as we said, everybody shares everything. People knew about Danny's idol, and Carson knows about Jamie's fake idol because Matthew told him. Carolyn's the only one. Carolyn's the only one where nobody knows somehow that she has the idol. And again, more power to her. I think Carolyn's still playing really well. I still maintain that Carson probably is playing the best and is in the best spot, but Carolyn's up there as well. And no one knows she has an idol.
Yeah, how do I describe this? So I still am very high on Caroline. I was high on her basically the entire pre-merge. I think she needs to kind of wait for the right moment to make her move, but eventually. So how do I describe it? Right now, nobody sees her as a threat at all. Nobody's even thrown her name out. Nobody said, I think Caroline has the idol. How do I describe it? You could play a great silent game, but eventually people need to know what you did, right? So eventually she's going to have to make her move. I'm so curious about how she ends up using this idol. Like, it really is fascinating because I don't think anybody knows. Maybe Jam Jam knows. I don't think anybody knows though.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, for better or for worse, I mean, probably for worse. In the new era, I don't think she really has to do that much, honestly. Like Stephen Fishback was saying this on Twitter too, where he retweeted somebody's theory where it's like in the new era, because of all these twists, the game changes literally day to day now. You can't predict it. And again, not to take anything away from Erica, Marianne, or Gabler, but it's like your best bet in the new era, honestly, is to play a great social game, be Michelle, like make a lot of friends, be a great social game. Don't worry about doing too much because the twists can screw you up. Don't be a front runner like the Jessies and the Highs or the Shans or whatever, because you'll get cuts. Just wait. It's almost like Squid Game where it's like you cross over the glass bridge and then people are going to fall. And then as long as you're the last one not to fall, you'll win. So all Carolyn has to do, honestly, I hate to say it, is just be underestimated, keep playing in the middle, wait until Final 5, the last chance you could play your idol. And either you can say, you know what, I'm not in danger, but I'll play it to show you guys I can keep a secret. Or like Marianne did, just keep it until final tribal and whip it out then, and everyone will be shocked. That's all she really has to do. Because if you try to make a move too early, you're going to get cut. So she really can't afford to just wait until final 4 or 5, honestly.
Right. Yeah. And again, we could get down to it, but like, I think that it's going to be tough for her, right? I think at the end, because again, the jury, when you get to the final 3, it's all about the perception of yourself to the jury, right? So I think based on what I kind of meant by when I said she's going to have to eventually make a move that like is clearly hers is I think if she were to go to the final 3 with like a Jam Jam or a Carson, I think people will know Jam Jam was on the block multiple times and kind of like escaped vote. And I think people just, I don't know. It's tough to say how people perceive Carson right now. Like, right. Like I kind of see him as like the really smart, based on the confessionals. I kind of see him as like the really smart young guy who's like behind a lot of the votes. They could easily see Carson as just like a young guy who's there. But if they do perceive Carson as like a mastermind, then, that's not something you want to sit next to. So again, I don't want to get too much into this because we really get down a rabbit hole here, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see how she handles the idol and what move she makes. But I do think she's going to have to make some kind of move that she owns down the stretch here. Um, yeah, and do you have anything to say or?
No, I was gonna say, we'll get through the episode and we'll talk about Carson, being sick, but it's like, I think that's how people see him. I mean, he's obviously very smart. He's an aerospace engineer, but it's like,
Right.
I think people see him, he's 20, as the younger brother. People like him. People want to work with him. And the only person so far who has been like, I don't know if I can trust Carson, was Sarah, and Sarah's now gone. I think people just see him as a impressionable young guy. Now, obviously, at some point, if he starts to keep playing a great game, he might be exposed soon. But that's why I felt like Carson is playing the best, because people, I just don't think, respect Carolyn yet. People at least really like and respect Carson from what we're seeing. So
Right. Right. I think I definitely agree with that.
mhm.
Oh yeah, and from our previous conversation, I was gonna say also, uh, speaking of, we had all these conversations early in the season about how many advantages there were, extra votes, idols. We had no idea, fake idols. We couldn't keep track, and now we're down to an idol in Carolyn's possession, a fake idol in Jamie's possession. She doesn't know it's fake. Everyone else seems to think it's real.
Mhm.
And then an extra vote for Lauren. So first of all, Lauren's extra vote becomes way more powerful as the votes go on. So
Mhm.
somehow they're going to have to try to flush that, because you don't want a final six and her. Well, when's the last time she could play her extra vote? Do we know?
I feel like it changes. I want to say it's 6. Five seems too small. I want to say 6, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, if it is, let's just say it is 6. You don't want you don't want her taking the extra vote to 6. So they got to figure out a way to get rid of that. Especially because everybody knows about it. Like I said, we're still waiting for Jamie to get bamboozled by the fake idol, which I'm fairly certain is going to happen. And again, Carolyn, who knows what's going to happen with her idol? So I'm also curious. All this being said, is what more is going to be dumped into the game from here on out? We see people searching next week. We see Danny searching. Somebody was like, "Oh, he's always in the woods. He's always looking for idols."
Mhm.
Are we going to see like the inheritance advantage put back into the game? Like, like what advantages are we going to see go back into the game? Because I'm completely
Ugh.
fine. I'm completely fine if they just like hide one more idol the rest of the season and just let them go from there. Um, because, or at least if they're going to have a twist, make it something that we've seen in the past, make it something that the players have seen in the past, and make it something that like lasts like one vote. You know what else I could see them doing as a twist this season? It was the what was the vote last season where they predicted, who was it that Cody predicted Owen to win? Was that what the twist was? In the
Oh yeah,
immunity count?
like the sports betting thing, like basically like where
Yeah,
you know what the challenge is and you have to place a bet on who you think's going to win the challenge.
right. And then, but that was crazy because Carla
They
and
tied, yeah.
Owen, and then Cody was able to get immunity also from that, right? He got immunity for the right. So that was like half the people were safe. I could see them doing that. I actually I do like that. It's just like that situation was really weird because
No,
there were
we said this last season. I like
yeah,
that. I like the betting on it. I just don't like it at final 7. I think that's a little too late to have, like you just said, half the people safe. If they want to do that at final, they want to do that next week at final 9. Choose your champion. Thank you. Yeah,
right,
they want to do that next week at final 9. I'm okay with it. Final 10. Just
right,
once you get past 8, it gets a little too crazy.
right,
Granted, we didn't know that Carla and Owen were going to tie, but like you can't have half the tribe safe with that case. So I
right.
like choose your champion, just do it earlier. But I do agree with you as well, where it's like it's so refreshing to have one idol in the game and only one advantage. So we're in a pretty good spot. If they hide another idol next week, I don't mind, because as we know, when the idol gets played, it gets put back into circulation. So I'm fine with that. I'll fall off my chair if it's inheritance again or something stupid again.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens. And one last thing before we get into like the challenge and stuff is I'm still curious to know if the chessboard is going to be anything. I know people are speculating about that. People said that like the pieces have been getting less and less, so that it's just like they
Yeah.
think that it's just like symbolism for how many people are left in the game. But who knows? I want them to. That I would be all for it. Hide an idol at Tribal Council. Like we've been waiting for it for 4 seasons now. Like we've known that they're going to eventually do it. I didn't know if they were going to do it in 41 because it would be like maybe a little too obvious. 42 maybe a little bit too obvious, but like we're in 44 now. Like I think that we're any day it could happen. So I'm curious to see if that ends up happening. Okay, let's get to the challenge. So it was the same thing as we had last season, except for it was like a different ending. This was the challenge that Gabler, I believe, is the one that Gabler was yelling out. Like,
Nebraska,
yeah,
Alaska,
he was
yeah,
yelling at
all that stuff,
states
yeah.
and people for like an hour straight, which was obviously an iconic moment of last season. Um, it was just different with the footholds. This was I'll never. I mean, I every single time I think about this challenge, I think about like Rupert, like his giant feet, like trying to stand on the perch in Heroes and Villains. Heroes vs
Oh,
Villains.
I thought you were gonna say you think about Tocantins where Coach, like after exile, like literally collapses off of the thing.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, I love that. I almost wish they saved that for like a later immunity challenge when there's
I
like 8
agree.
left. Right,
I
because
agree.
I only having 4 people and that was kind of annoying, but it's like it's so to me that's like so entertaining to watch like people like struggle like that. So I like this challenge because it featured the end and the people struggling in the net is so funny to me, but I
That,
but
we said this last season, like that is horrifying to get stuck in that net. Like Carolyn was, I mean, that was funny though. Carolyn just screaming and Carson Sick is like, "You can
it's
do it."
that is funny, hilarious to watch. Would be a nightmare to actually do it. Like I never wanted. Like the fact that Carson. I was like, when Carolyn like barely got through, and like they were about to finish. Whoever it was, Heidi and Jamie, they were about to
Mhm.
finish the challenge. I was just like yelling at I was like about to yell like Carson, like don't do it. Just like give like just like it's not worth it. And then they like they pan to him after they get back to the mat and he's like already in there like rolling around. I was like, oh, like what do you, he probably only was in there for like a minute, like they didn't have to do it.
You know what's funny? People on Twitter were like, because Carson's smart. Like, what? There is no chance they were going to win. Like, they were going to survive that. So why did he jump in? And people were like, come on. Jeff would have killed him if Jeff's like, you're not even going to try. You're not even going to jump in. So Carson probably was like, I got to at least like give some sort of an effort, even though I'm not going to get through.
Yeah, no, for sure. Um, yeah, I'm not really sure I have any other thoughts on the challenge. I do like the team aspect, kind of, but like I would have saved that last part is obviously like a historic, epic type immunity challenge. It's like perfect for when there's like 8 people after 7 people left. So I would have liked to see them save that. But one other thing I want to say about this immunity challenge, by the way, I kind of called Lauren once it got to the final 4, kind of called Lauren winning it because it is an advantage if you have smaller feet, right? I
Yeah.
would think, right? Because all the and by the way, not taking anything away from her, still extremely impressive. I don't have big feet and I would be terrible at it still. So so um yeah, but yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. I thought for a second I was like maybe Danny will pull it off, but he was really grinding. He was really grinding. It was impressive just to watch. Honestly, everybody did a pretty good job there. Um, one more thing I was gonna say. Oh, and the other thing I was gonna say about this challenge is they they've done this a few times this season. The foreshadowing is getting like way too obvious in some
Oh,
cases.
yeah.
Like, did they need to put the part about Danny saying he wanted Lauren out like right before the challenge? Like, come on, like come on.
Okay. So
Did we need that? Because I think we all knew what was maybe coming.
this was a very, again, I thought this was a great episode. My only complaint, I texted you, my only complaint was that the challenge, like last season, lasted way too long. It took up like half the episode. But the foreshadowing was a lot. Like you said, when Danny says, I want Lauren gone, you knew she was going to win. When Lauren's like, nobody wants to be my partner, and I'm probably going to be the weak link in the challenge, I knew she was going to win. And like you said, when you have smaller feet, I mean, Yule said this back in Cook Islands where he was like with the whole elephant metaphor, where it's like, Lauren just has less surface area with her feet,
Right.
smaller feet, so she's going to naturally have an advantage. So I had a feeling that she was going to win the whole time. I would have bet on that. And also going back to what you said earlier in this podcast about, Kane and Brandon being confident. When Kane gives the confession of like, if someone from Ratu doesn't win this game, we messed up. I'm like, okay, so Ratu's not going to win this game at this point. Like it's like the heavy-handedness. Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah,
it's
the
just
entire episode, Kane being like, it's our game to win. Like.
By the way, did you see when they messed up his name?
Yeah. That I
I
didn't.
cannot believe they messed up his name. That was ridiculous.
I didn't notice it in real time, but I went on Twitter after. I was like, wait a second. I was like, no way this actually happened because I don't actually like once you're past a certain episode, you don't really look at the name every time. But it was that was crazy. That was crazy. How do you not notice that? Come on. But yeah, I don't want to take away from what was a very enjoyable episode. So it was a good episode. So
Yeah,
Anything else we want to talk about before we get to questions?
let's see. I feel like we actually covered a lot already. We covered the whole strategy behind the vote. We covered the pre-tribal strategy. We covered the challenge.
Carson was extremely sick from PB&J. That was almost fishback esque, except for like it wasn't raining as hard. So
severe gastrointestinal
yeah,
distress. Yeah. I mean, look, I think nobody was concerned that Carson was going to get pulled. Like it was never going to happen. But it was just like at first I was like, why are they showing this? Because I'm sure people get sick all the time. But then I realized they showed it because it was leading up to the challenges in pairs. So who's going to want to be with the sick guy? And then Carolyn's like, I'll do it. But Carolyn was not getting out of that net anyway. So
yeah. Yeah, and Carson like barely being able to get words
you
out.
can do it.
Yeah.
And Carolyn's just
Oh,
like Carol. If you watch with closed captioning, like you see like 5 times Carolyn screaming,
yeah, crazy. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to address, but I think we're good. It's funny how like even though there was a lot to talk about with the vote, it was like there was less to talk about because there wasn't some crazy twist that we'd never seen before.
Well, not only that, I think you're right. It was because there was no big twist, and ironically, I think that this was the best episode to talk about strategy wise, and we've kind of gotten to questions pretty quick. But Dylan, also because again, the challenge took up like 25-30 minutes. Like when they have to go to a commercial in the middle of a challenge, I'm like, no. Here's my biggest pet peeve. I have a big pet peeve. Not only when you go to a commercial in the middle of a challenge. That's bad. That means the challenge is going on too long. I don't mind when Jeff says, I'll go tally the votes and they cut to commercial for dramatic effect. I'm okay with that. What I don't like is when they cut to commercial in the middle of a challenge because then it's just taking too long. What bothers me a lot, and I don't know if you caught this, and Jeff did this last season too, the challenge was taking so long, Jeff had to reintroduce the rules. So he says, like, you're going to go through the mud nets, dig up the planks, then round 2, go up the slope, cross the bridge, go down, and then the chimney sweep, whatever. After the whole Carolyn and Carson thing took so long and whatever, Jeff had to say to them at the start of round 2, okay, as a reminder, what you're going to do. I'm like, Jeff, you just said this like 2 minutes ago. Ugh.
Yeah, he's like, if in case you guys have bad memory from being out here not eating, here's the rules again.
If you missed what I said maybe 20 minutes ago, I'll repeat the rules. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh man. Oh yeah. Okay. So we'll give a minute or so for people to get their questions in before we get to it. What I do want to bring up while people are doing that is there is a rumor floating around that Bruce will be on season 45, which is exciting for him and pretty cool to see, right? So Bruce obviously was medevaced the opening episode, the season premiere, due to injury, and Jeff publicly said on his podcast he's more than welcome back. He will play again, and it looks like from the rumors that Bruce will be on 45 with mostly newbies. So interesting to see that. That's for sure. Like, you know, we've seen medevacs come back, but a medevac coming back directly on the next season that's going to be cool to see. I'm excited. I'm happy that Bruce is able to get that opportunity. And we should be only like assuming that they're about to start filming 45 or that they are filming 45 right now. We're probably like a month away from finding out what 46 is going to be, and all speculation. And if you put the things together, it is going to be returnees 46. So I'm for sure excited to have a podcast in a month or so talking about whatever the leaked returnee cast is. That is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, still rumors, but it comes from obviously a reputable source in Inside Survivor. But I mean, I do think Bruce is on next season, and obviously, I think it's great for him. He deserves it after his rough experience this time. Yeah, I mean, I think I heard other people being like, "Oh, could they do another Philippines where it's like him and 2 other medevacs as like captains, quote unquote?" But like, I think honestly, when you go out night 1 like Bruce, you're not even a vet. He's basically a returning player. He has. It's funny. It's not funny, but like he has 12 more hours of experience than them, Dylan, and he was probably concussed for 11 of those 12 hours. So it's like he really himself is still a newbie. So 45 will literally be probably all newbies plus Bruce, and Bruce is also a newbie, really. So I really hope that it is true, and we do see him get another shot. And yeah, I guess like you said, we'll see if the rumor mill keeps churning. They usually film the seasons back to back in usually like early May to June, although maybe they're out there right now or they're going to fly out next week. But like Dylan said, we'll probably know more about 45 and 46 fairly soon, I would say.
Fairly soon. Yeah.
Fairly soon. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be, and I'll never forget when we first started the podcast, us doing all the preseason podcasts about breaking down the season 40 cast, and it's like I'm ready to get back to it. I'm ready to get back to it. The excitement of seeing players get a second chance.
Is it bad? I mean, I know that we're both excited for vets because we haven't seen vets in a long time, but is it bad that I'm more excited for the rumors to be they're back to 2 tribes and they have tribe swaps? I'm actually more excited to see that than I am to see returning players. I'm like, just give me 2 tribes and give me swaps. That's all I want.
I'm hopeful and optimistic that that's going to happen as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, let's get to this first question from Jay. By the way, what happened to the Danny Brandon relationship after the summit? Why did their relationship seem to break down post-merge?
So yeah, I was actually wondering that too. I was going to blame it on the edits and be like, how come they showed this Danny Brandon journey conversation and then right away it's like, oh, they're going to go for each other. I think what Brandon said on his exit interview was that, I mean, he and Danny wanted to work together. Now, obviously, they were never going to make a final 2 pact. I think they were going to go for each other at some point, as big threats often do. I think in his mind, he knew that Sokka and Ratu were going to go at each other eventually. I don't think he thought at final 10, Danny was going to go for him at that point. I think he thought he had a few more votes left, but that's probably what happened. It was just the Sokka Ratu war, and Brandon was probably hoping he could work with Danny longer, but it just wasn't going to work out that soon.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the target would have been Lauren if Lauren didn't win immunity, right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
So she wins immunity, and now it's like, well, what do we do? Everyone seems to like Kane, plus he's not as big of a threat for immunity, so it's like, all right, we can keep him around. Jamie, they're like, oh, she may have an idol. So I guess it was just like kind of by default, like he had to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, here we go. One sec. We got a lot of comments tonight. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
From Jay, do you guys think Jam Jam was blindsided giving his shocked face after Brandon was voted out?
So here's the thing, and this happened during the whole Felicia Tribal Council too. It's like Jam Jam and Carolyn, like they're characters, but they're such great actors. I was convinced, Dylan, until I kind of went on Twitter and did my research. I was convinced Jam Jam got blindsided by this whole idol play and then Brandon going home. But then, like we just discussed earlier on the podcast, it's like, well, no, Tika knew what was going to happen. They just voted with Ratu to stay in the middle. Jam Jam obviously is faking the blindside face. We've seen this happen before. He fakes the blindside face so Jamie, Lauren, and Kane don't get suspicious that he knew about this. So he fooled me. I'm sure he fooled them too. But yeah, I don't think he actually was that shocked.
Yeah, it seems like Jam Jam. I mean, he's told us to in the confessionals. He's like, I'm really good at acting, and all. It was an act for sure, in my opinion. Yeah. From the Ohio State for the win. He wants to know, I read somewhere that someone maybe thought Carolyn struggled purposely in the challenge to spare Carson doing the tough rope since he was sick. Do you buy that? I don't buy that, but it's interesting. Interesting speculation. I'm going to guess that Carolyn was just terrible at it because I cannot see her being good at that type of challenge. Any challenge where you need to be like calm, definitely not for her.
I mean, when the season opens up and she completely can't do the whole like ring over the pole thing, yeah, Carolyn's not going to be great at the challenges. Maybe if it's, you know what's crazy, Dylan? And you just said if it has to do with being calm, she wouldn't do well. I wonder, as a quick aside, because I disagree. I think that, she didn't do that for Carson. I think Carolyn was just terrible at the nets.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you think she would have done it at Chimney Sweep? Because I feel like I could see Carolyn, being bad at all these challenges, but maybe a challenge. I mean, granted, she could be good at like the freaking the challenge that you use your feet. Maybe
yes,
they do it like every other season, like where you use your feet. But maybe something weird like that she could be good at. But I have a weird feeling. You think Carolyn would be good at the Chimney Sweep challenge?
What you mean?
Oh, like the endurance thing tonight. The endurance.
Oh yeah, okay, that's what I thought you meant. Okay, the end to the end. I could see her being better at that type of thing where she has to like dig deep than like one where you got to stay like perfectly like calm and balanced. Because I almost thought like last week when they did, or it was maybe 2 weeks ago when they had like the over the head thing. I think that was last week, right? Where Franny won it.
She was out first.
I thought she was going to be, I thought for a second, I was like, maybe she's going to be like sneaky good at these balance type challenges. First one out. So, yeah, I feel like her type of challenge is going to be more like the digging deep type, where I feel like she's going to be like sneakily good at it. But we'll see. All right, this question here. Also, given the fact that players have less time to strategize before tribal these days, and thus less time to form a proper plan, do you think it's because production wants more live tribals to happen? I'm gonna say no. I don't think they do. I think that maybe that in their mind they're like, oh, more chaos could happen if. I think like across their mind, like yeah, more chaos with the vote could happen. I don't necessarily think live tribals. I just also think that they're just doing it because the game is 26 days and they like have to get all these people voted out. The easy solution is just to extend the game back to 39 days. But again, I could go on a rant about that, but I won't.
Yes, I think everybody both recording this podcast and watching this podcast probably wants 39 days back. Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you. I don't think it's because they want more live tribals. I think they like live tribals. I mean, I think they're not going to turn a chance away to have one happen because it's very exciting television. It is a show before a game. What I will say is that, I just feel like they do have less time to strategize, and it could be because of live tribals, but I also just think I need to go back and look at 41 to 43. Like I feel like I was doing some quick math while you were talking, and I was like, could we just do every why can't we have a tribal on day like 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15? We could have one every other day, and then once you get to like 21, then you have to do it every single night. I think the reason why this whole thing happened back to back to back is maybe because of the brand Matthew and Bruce Medevacs. I think that kind of screwed up their schedule a little bit with 2 people leaving due to injury, because I still can't believe they've had 3 tribals 3 nights in a row this early. So I think it has to do with that probably.
All right. Next question. Ohio State for the win wants to know, who are some players you think will be back in the next returnee season? So we get asked this a lot. I'm going to quickly just rattle off the names at the top of my head, and whatever I miss, or whatever I say. My prediction remains the same. I think it is. I think it's going to be old era versus new era. It's going to be like, you're going to get like your Shan, Ricard, maybe Xander, because I could see them like, I think they really liked him. Drea, Omer, Jesse, Cody, I don't know. I'm off the top of my head. It's somebody who we'll see what happens with this season. Carolyn clearly in the tier of probably a returnee eventually. Versus like your hopefully fingers crossed Doms, Christians, Chrissy, like those types of players. So that's my like hope. That's it's high hopes, but it's a hope.
No, you covered more than I did. I thought the question was just asking about like who from this season would be back, but you obviously covered a lot of like people in general that could come back. It's very simple for me. If you're doing like a tier list, in the top tier it's Tika, who will be back next season. Tika, Carolyn, Carson, Jam, easily. Then you go down a couple pegs. Then I would say, well, I mean, Bruce is kind of locked in, but we'll put Bruce aside. Then you could say, honestly, at that point, I think it actually gets kind of tough who can come back. Like maybe Danny if they want that type of archetype, but I don't know if maybe Danny. If they want to go for like a Kelly Wentworth second chance thing, they could obviously pull from like your Claires or your Helens or whatever. But I really do think, and maybe this is why some people have been kind of like mixed on 44. It's like it's clearly Tika are the main characters and also the more interesting players, and then it just drops for like, who else would you want to see back?
Yeah. And then what do you think about like the previous new era seasons?
So you named off a lot of them. I'm not going to repeat the same names, but you covered everybody. Who's something that you haven't said that could come back, but you named all the big ones. I mean, it could be Noel, Owen. Another name could be like Hi. Again, if you still want to go like a whole second chance route, there's a lot of options in the new era. You can go Jenny from 42. People love Jenny preseason before she got taken out in that tribal. So I think there are a lot of options. I think that the easiest thing for them, and I agree with you, I want it to be old era, new era, because I want to see a lot of the 30s people back. I really do. For them, it's super easy just to stick with the new era because they have a lot of options. But I'm hoping that it's I'm hoping that it's a mix of old and new. So
Yep, we'll see. All right, we have a question from Andrew here. He wants to know, how did all the Franny voters not get wind of the Danny Idol play for her, given all the loose lips? I think that's a good point, right? It's like there's so much spread information. How could this eventually not get back to them? And I think that based on, like, here's my take, right? So we know from the exit press that at least Brandon had no idea of the Danny, like it didn't get back to from Jam Jam that Danny was going to play the Idol. So how did how did they not get wind of it? I guess Carson and Jam Jam really just kept their mouths shut, and kind of just didn't want them to know, and they kind of just wanted to purposely vote wrong. Also, I would say, like, a lot of it is one, overconfidence. Clearly, we saw that all throughout all of them were saying how confident they were, right? Especially Kane. You know, we feel like we're in position that one of us should win this game, right? It's like, well, maybe you spoke too soon. So I would say one, overconfidence as well, and two, we spoke about this podcast, like, not a lot of time.
Yeah, I really think that it's, I mean, I think that's true. I think it could be even more simple where, like Brandon said in his exit press, he just, and they're all guilty of it, but Brandon got voted out, so he'll take the blame. Like he didn't check in. Like he said, I had conversations with Carson and with Jam Jam and with Lauren. I was like, all right, you vote for Danny, you vote for Franny, because they were pretty sure once Matt left, they were pretty sure either Franny or Danny had the idol. So in their minds, it's like we should at least split, because even if Tika's not with us, if we split 4 and 3, we can at least keep Ratu together. And I just think that they said maybe at the water well, oh, let's do a split vote, and then just never followed up on it. So even if they caught wind of the idol play, they probably thought, oh, we'll just split the votes, and either of them will go home no matter what if Tika's with us. They just never checked in. And like you said, Dylan, they got confident. It ran out of time, didn't check in, and it all just fell apart.
Yeah, I think that's what it seems like that's the type of thing it is. All right, from Jay here again. He wants to know, what do you guys think of the fact that Josh, Matt, and Brandon were voted out on consecutive days, 13, 14, and 15? Yeah, we kind of already addressed this. I think we're both, we were a little bit shocked by that for sure.
I just didn't realize it. I think it could be due to the medevacs, but yeah, I mean, that's obviously why the game is fast paced. If people are getting voted out every 24 hours.
Yep. All right, this question here. Who do you guys see as possibly being runner-ups? For some reason, I could envision Kane being one. It's tough to say runner-ups because there's so much game left, right? Like I said, I feel like 2 of the Tika are going to get to the final tribal, which would mean that one of them would be a runner-up. So that's the best answer I could give you at this point.
I mean, I feel like people are going to want to say Carolyn, because I feel like, I mean, I still think Carolyn could win. I feel like the audience is being painted a picture that, you know, Carolyn is playing a strong game. She does know the game pretty well, despite her being a character, but people just don't give her the time of day. She has good reads. She knows the game pretty well, but people just don't want to listen to her. We've seen this many times now. I still think it could lead into a story arc where she gets there and she's able to explain her game and she gets the respect. But it's also very easy to see a scenario, Dylan, where she gets there and once again, nobody even gives her any respect and she's a runner-up. So that's what I'll say, Carolyn, for now, but it wouldn't shock me if she could win too.
All right, next question. From Ohio State for the win again. He wants to know, my final question for you guys is, what do you think of the 90-minute episodes starting next season? I'm excited for that. It'll really help with character and player development and more camp life. That's something that we haven't spoke about yet, because we mentioned the Bruce thing. That was the other leak, apparently, is that 90-minute episodes could be starting as soon as season 45. That would be awesome, because I think, you know, I think a main complaint for a lot of people this season, at least certainly for me, I felt like at this point last season, I knew everybody on the cast way more than I know this season. Everybody on the cast. Why is that? Maybe more attention to advantages have been shown in the edit, but the 90-minute episodes should ensure that that never happens.
Well, I would agree with you and Jay. And when I first heard the rumor, I was very excited too. And I want more time dedicated to the bonds between the players, who's aligned with who, so we really know where the game pieces are on the board. But if Jeff's going to fill the time with more twists and gimmicks, then I don't want it. So if it's done the right way, I think it's a great thing for the show. If it's done poorly, it's not that good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping for the best. We'll see. Let's see. Oh, okay. I actually like this question a lot from Darius. He wants to know, did Brandon forget Matt mentioning Danny's idol? I think we kind of spoke about this a little bit earlier in the podcast. My thoughts on this are that he didn't forget, but like, I guess it was also like another step. Like, Danny may have the idol, but we're ultimately placing the votes on Franny. So in order for this to fail, it would have to be him playing the idol correctly for Franny, which is he really going to do that at Final 10? If he knows the vote's not going on, like there's still so much game left. I don't know if he's going to actually do that. Like, yeah, he was probably speculating that Danny had the idol, but it's a whole nother question of whether you actually think he's going to play it or not. Clearly, they did not have a big fear of him playing it, or they did, and they just couldn't get the split vote together.
Yeah, so I don't think Brandon forgot. I think I said this earlier in the podcast, Darius, but so Brandon and Ratu thought, they thought Matt had it, because when they got back from that challenge and Matt's like, oh, I need my bag. Where's my bag? Where's my bag? They were like, oh, he needs his bag because he has the idol. But obviously, if Matt had the idol, he would have saved himself last vote. So they realized, well, he didn't have it, obviously, which means that Danny or Franny have it. They didn't think Heidi had it. So I guess Brandon should have realized it's more likely that Danny had it than Franny did. But to your point, they may have put their votes on Franny regardless, because she also won the challenge last week. She's kind of seeming like a pretty decent threat. So I don't know if he forgot, but obviously they figured one of Danny, Franny had it. They obviously didn't choose correctly. Well, technically they did, but Danny saved her. Technically they did. Their problem, like I said a couple times now, they didn't split the votes. If they split the vote, they probably had a better shot.
For sure. And then I think this is a good way to end, because we kind of started this way, but I know a lot of people came in late, so we could retreat back to this, I guess. But Ohio State for the win wants to know, what are both of your favorite Keith Nell moments and memories? So sad and devastated about his passing. I forgot to ask that question, but wanted to know both of your thoughts. Yeah. We brought this up at the beginning of the podcast. Obviously, devastating passing. Keith Nell, one of my favorite players ever. I was genuinely shocked and obviously really upset about, when I heard the news on Tuesday night. I would say like the great thing about Keith is, and this goes for, it's a big, casting type thing, is I think the great thing about Keith is that he was so real. Like, right. It never like he told it like it was in every single confessional. And that's what made him, that's one of the reasons he was so likable, is like, you always knew you were going to get a great confessional for him. You always knew he was going to tell it like it is. No like BS type of guy. And just a really good player also, right? I believe he finished 5th and 4th, if I'm correct. So not only was he great character, great player as well. Definitely for sure. One of my favorites, I would have to say. And yeah, just absolutely devastating to hear that, this news.
I mean, this, like you said, this is a really great question, because immediately I could think of 5 moments. Like Keith had so many times where he lit up our screen. Like I could think of him with the tuck where he called it a toto. The classic stick to the plan, which everybody quotes because that blew up the tribal council. When when Wes is eating the freaking chicken nuggets, and he's like, well, Wes hasn't been in jail yet. When he's like, Survivor's not fun, going on a cruise is fun. So yeah, Keith had so many great moments. And obviously, like we said at the start, very sad to hear about Keith's passing. So we hope his family and friends are doing all right.
Yeah, and I think I agree. Yeah, prayers to his family. Hope they're doing all right. And yeah, I know Rob Cesternino mentioned that he was like maybe putting something together like as a tribute for that. Nice, so nice. I'm curious to see what I would love to see that. So yeah, but I think that's a good way to kind of wrap up this podcast. Yeah, again, obviously, in my opinion, legendary player. So yeah, devastating news, but to more of, to go back to the recap we just had. Happy that we got a good episode last night, because that's been, at least in my opinion, a little bit of a struggle this season. And I am excited to be back next week. another Wednesday we got coming up, episode 9, and we're slowly getting close to it always goes so fast. We're
It
it's
does,
like the NFL season. Every time snap your fingers, you're week 8, and we're moving on. So
Dylan, I'm just excited. Next week, Final 9. First time in the new era we've had a Final 9 vote. That's not the split into 2 groups. I'm hoping. So hopefully a really good Final 9 vote next week.
Yep, for sure.
All right, grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.